Hello, welcome everyone. All right, my name is Kyla Ray. I'm your host of the Coaching Shop, where coaches come to talk shop and build worlds that work. Tonight, we are exploring a simple and sometimes unsettling idea that nothing in our lives happens accidentally. Just as an apple seed carries the pattern of an apple tree, our lives unfold according to patterns long before we're consciously aware of them. So, we're joined tonight with founder of Ideal Coaching Global, pioneer of ontological coaching, and truly a master in this industry, Betty J. Sproul. And we're going to explore how results reveal our patterns, not our failures. Why changing circumstances rarely changes our experience, and what becomes possible when we begin to see the structures we are already living inside. So, I am personally really excited about this conversation. Betty, are you with us?
I am here.
Welcome. Hi, Betty Sproul.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to have you here.
Oh, welcome everyone. I see a few names I recognize. Well, welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. Be sure to say hello in the chat. This is going to be an interactive class, even though you're not on video, but we want you to join the discussion. So type your insights, tell us when something's, really resonating with you, ask questions. We want you to be involved.
Yeah. And when you type in the chat, put where you are on where you're calling from on Zoom on, so we get a sense that we're all here together. I like to know where people are. And so again, thank all of you. This is a thought-provoking topic. And I invite you to listen not from what you know or from what you don't know, because that's how we usually listen, right? But to listen, maybe you can be in wonder from a place of wonder, which is one of the most alive, dynamic, and it is a practices that we can live in terms of wonder. And that's what we're going to do for the next hour here with Kyla. And we're wondering what are practices and what are the practices that we're using to structure our lives. And if the practices that we are, and I'm using intentionally, if we're using to structure and shape our lives, then what are the ones, are there some more that we can use? A couple of weeks ago, Kyla, I was on a cruise and was on this huge cruise ship. And I'm up on the deck early in the morning and I just went, wow. And I said something like, this ship, this ocean liner, comes from a pattern that emerged many, many years ago when people were living on islands, probably, and they wanted to get from one island to the next. And so they built these crafts. It was a little boat or something. I don't even know if they called them boats, but it was something for transportation. And then I said, wow, this huge ship came out of that patterning. And human beings, this is what we do. We invent, we pattern, and and then there are cruise ships, there are ocean liners, there are what called warships, all kinds of transportation that goes on the ocean, and they're built out of patterns. And the patterns evolve, just like right now in our lives, our patterns have evolved. The patterns of Societal patterns have evolved. Our own personal patterns have evolved. Our and in our lives, we can look at relationship patterns. We can look at money patterns or abundance. We can look at so many things. And when I say look, observe, and we can even ask the question, once we understand this, it can be life shifting, I promise you. Because then you're no longer, some people will be. Some people have patterns of being disappointed all the time. And if there's a pattern in your life of being disappointed, I tell you, no matter what class you go to, no matter what happens, if that's a pattern of disappointment in your life, guess what? You'll be disappointed. And this is the whole thing about this model. It doesn't make you bad or good. It's just saying that can have you can shift your patterns. And when you shift your patterns, and maybe this is the hard part, when you shift your patterns, as many of you know, it means that you embody different ways of being. You just don't say, I'm not going to eat with a fork anymore, especially if you don't know how to eat with a fork. And you got to take the fork up and practice and embody how to eat with forks. And pretty soon it's in your body. That's how patterns are. So I want to use you for an example, Kyla. Some of you may not can see this, but Kyla is about to give birth to a baby. Yay, Kyla. How many babies do you think has been born on this planet from human beings? Not just from human beings. How many births have there been? Write it in the chat. Let's just see. What? So, is there a pattern to human babies and to human beings as distinct from, so I can't even imagine a number, as distinct from, let's say, squirrels? There are patterns called squirrels. And so Kyla is not going to give birth to a squirrel. Why not? And a squirrel won't give birth to a human being. Why not? It's not in their patterning. The pattern has already been set. The pattern of giving birth to a human being, and I said a squirrel or a rabbit or even a fish, the patterns are there. And so with us human beings, we live in social patterns. Hmm? We live in our own personal patterns. And then social patterns make up what a country is, what a city is. And then there's the pattern of patterning, living together ecologically with all these different beings and animals and trees and plants and so much more. So if the universe is composed of patterns, and that's what I'm asserting here. So just step back and look and see if you can notice from a word we use around here quite a bit, a way of practicing and their worldviews. So we'll look at the world through the lens of ontology, or if you look at the lens, look at the world through a lens of lens of separation. We'll use that. Ontological listening and speaking and observing isn't separation. We're making something else because different patterns evolve over time. But you begin to notice and you begin to see what are the patterns from which I'm living my life. Not that, and there's nothing wrong with you. you were born into a set of patterns that were going on even before you were thought of. You see? You were born into a set of patterns that were going on even before you were thought of. Like Kyla's baby. She's going to be born into an existing conversation that's already going on. And I don't think she'll mind me telling you. She's, you know, it's a baby girl. And so the baby girl is going to be born into conversations about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be, and Kyla is a white woman, what it means to be a white woman. All of that's already there before this child even leaves the womb. But she's born into it because she's born into patterns. She's born into like what time, what time do we have dinner? That's a pattern that we develop in our family. Do we hug each other before we depart from each other? All of these patterns, and we're not even aware of all of them. And then when we start to move in a new direction, if we don't bring patterns that are congruent and consistent with the direction we're moving into, you can tell me what's happened. I'm pretty sure you can because we see it happening all the time. We fall back. And so we live. If, so me for an example, um, some of my patterns, especially around order, they're not at the top of the list of an orderly person. My sister will tell you this, Joyce. She's always been on me all the time about pick this up, do this, and do this. She's a whole different set of patterns that she operates from. Now, the thing about noticing your patterns is to not judge them, to not judge you, because you're here, and this is the beauty of all of this, is that you're here. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's the truth, but you're here to have your life generate new patterns for us living together here on planet Earth. So, what life are you generating? And patterns are generated. And we'll talk a little bit more about that before we get you into generating. I'm going to say that once we begin to notice, so we have a large pattern culturally here in the United States and through the world, and all cultures don't live this way, is this pattern of separation. I'm separate from you. You're separate from me. And these patterns of separation, and it's not just between political powers or social groups, but when we are born, when we come out of the womb, something happens. We get separated from our mom, right? And that becomes a pattern. And then the next part is we must, unless there is interaction, interrelatedness, and interconnection between mom and the baby probably will not make it. We found that out. Studies have been doing. We human beings are born into a patterns of care. We must be cared for, fed, diapers changed. All of that kind of stuff goes on. But care, which I'm not going to call him a friend, but someone whose work I admire greatly, he talks a lot about structural coupling. And Martirani, great, a great philosopher in the domain of biology, and that we are biological beings. We have a body, but sometimes there's some teachings that tell us we don't have a body. Get out of your body. Forget about your body. But we're seeing something else here. It's in your body that many of these uh, patterns live. They live in your body. And I'm talking about your entire body, not just a mental thing. This is like if you want to shift something in your life, and I see one of my teachers is here, my exercise teachers, Maria Francis. And I go to class 2 or 3 times a week because, and I've been doing it now for 3 years. And Maria has a certain set of practices. With those practices, they began to generate patterns. And with those patterns, my life starts to emerge as the patterns of those patterns. This is so cool. I mean, this is so cool. And so we start to notice the patterns. Now, I'll tell you this, we don't notice our patterns individually. That's why, in terms of ecology, we live in a system. And we notice people's patterns. They notice our patterns. They might call them something else. But have you had someone say to you, doing this or being this way is fantastic. And you nod your head, go, great, great, great. Yeah, yeah. And at the same time, they might say something like, what's having you suffer in this way? And then however you respond, you might go, no, no, what's it? But let's see, is there another pattern that's there that got collapsed and it's no longer present to you? This is what good friends do with each other, if you're willing to listen. This is what great coaches do with each other. They're not telling, they're disclosing to you your worldview, your patterns, how you show up. And in disclosing, then you can begin to participate in a way that you're generating new patterns. When there are new patterns, then your life will change. Let me say again. When you have the set of patterns that are consistent with that you say you're about, then you will have that life. That's the nature of patterns. Now, can I say there's good news and bad news about that? Well, so let's look at this, the patterns, the pattern of separation that we live in this ecological world. And in separation, we narrow our attention. So attention is based on what? Survival. Can I make it through the day? Can I make it through the night? Are those people going to come over and eat me? Are those animals going to attack me? All of that. We have moved thousands of years through those conversations of survival. Uh, and in this living system, certain patterns get hidden. Now, psychologists would say subconscious. I stay away from psychology. So, but not that I'm opposed to it, not at all. Psychology is needed. But we're in an ontological conversation right now. And with that, what do I mean? I mean that we are looking in a way that we can become observers. And what does it mean to observe? To see. We can observe the patterns. We can observe how the world is occurring and what's occurring without being detached, but it's observing. This is a level of consciousness that I'm going to suggest of what I believe, and it's a belief, and I have some evidence to support it, where people are moving to becoming different observers. And when you become a different observer, and you can start to observe patterns that we live into, and we start to observe that we live in an environment, and in this, a living environment, and that this living environment, we've made it a battleground, maybe rightfully so, because when there were dinosaurs running around, we had to be careful, right? But anyway, but we've continued it, and we have a battle going on with ourselves, and some of us are not even aware of the battle. And so these patterns, uh, we start to react to everything around us. And in our reactions, there's no, very little peace. There's not joy. There's not beauty. So, what we're saying here with these patterns, a future for you and for me, because we are inventing our future with others. No future is invented alone. We invent it from a historical perspective, from the narratives and stories that we live out of. We invent it with our language. So, language, if you just think about language, language is a pattern maker. Language shapes. You gonna say something, Kyla?
I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but
Yeah, okay.
well, I mean, it's such a fascinating conversation. One thing that's coming to me as you speak is I can see how it's easy to fall into this belief that life is happening to me,
Mhm,
or I'm an effect of my patterns,
mhm.
right? And almost like I don't have a lot of control over that. I'm born into these deep-seated, generationally built patterns. Um, it reminds me of something you said to me once that, we live really, it's very rare that a thinker comes into the world that's so profound that they break patterns and create new paradigms. And so as you talk, I, I want to be left feeling empowered to be able to do something about these patterns rather than feeling like, oh, dang, we're really like we're trapped in these patterns.
Yeah, no, it's very good. You are trapped in patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you have say so over is what patterns. Hear the distinction? If you don't have patterns, you can't be here. But we're living in patterns. Our life is a pattern. And now we can say, now what patterns do I choose to live my life from? And to remember, I said we're having ontological conversations, but in ontology is the study of being. It's not how to be, it's just the study of being. And so as we are human beings, and we human beings over time we've developed, and we still are developing. And we have developed patterns. So like you say, you're born into a set of patterns, mom, dad, community, culture, books you read, dances you dance, all of that. It's like now on Facebook. Sometimes I go on Facebook and they got these little kids dancing away and they're just moving. Now, please don't be offended, anyone here, when I say this, but I'm going to say it. Maybe 30 years ago, you didn't see little white kids dancing that way, right? So now the pattern has changed. Or the same thing with music. Music, which is a great pattern shifter. It's amazing. Music is set in patterns. You got jazz, you got hip hop, you got classical, you got all kinds of music. And it is constituted by patterns. You see? So we're born into patterns. Now, and to get to what you're saying, Kyla, because I think it's important, maybe, just maybe when we're born in patterns so that, maybe not so that we can be pattern shifters. Because each generation, each person brings a new set of patterns for the last generation. And some of the patterns that we have, we don't want to get rid of them, like the pattern of caring. But we're going to expand caring in the ecological model. How do we care? And what does it mean? Because if the universe is composed of patterns, let's say there's a pattern of hate. Those are patterns. I was talking to some friends. I said, a few years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have school shootings, rarely. But now it's become a pattern in our society. It's not just happening by itself, it's a pattern. And somewhere someone is walking along, and this pattern is called structural coupling. Because if we have these patterns, something can trigger that pattern. And then what do? You go get guns and you go out and you shoot people. And I want to specifically look at schools. This is a new pattern in this culture. Or let's say this pattern of separation. When we treat others as problems to solve or threats to manage, which is a pattern that some people live in, then uh, we retreat into our tribes, into separation, because what do we want to be? We want to feel safe. And there's certain people we can say, I feel safe with them, and I don't feel safe with them. And when we are with people that we trust, whatever trust is for us, but we are looking at trust in a whole nother way too. Uh, we're living inside a false sense of possibility and care. And then we retreat into our tribes, and then the world becomes a battlefield, a battleground. And let's say life is not a battleground, but life is a place to, use my agency here, to develop.
Mhm. So I'm
But
hearing two things here, Betty, that are coming up for me as you speak. In order to be empowered to shift my patterns, right? Instead of being an effect of my patterns. Um, One is connection, having trusted people that will disclose to me my patterns, name my patterns. It's important to language them, right? Like the school shootings, it's important we speak about that. If we want to shift that pattern, it's something that has to be brought to the surface, so to speak. So, connection and language
mhm,
start to give us agency. And I think because we want to bring this back to coaching, as coaches, um, it's important that we're looking for the patterns because I think we're so immersed in them that they can be difficult to see. They become our cognitive blind spots, right?
yes, it's very good. And if we can go, everything is a pattern. Which patterns are working for? And I tend to look for patterns that is working for just more than me, right? But what are the patterns that will bring awareness? And awareness is a big part of this. This is a lifetime of work. I want you to know that. And I haven't read the chat yet. But listen it. Don't agree, don't disagree. Just listen and see what emerges for you because we're here to encounter our own practices in a way that we can go, I didn't even know I thought that. I didn't even know that that was something that was happening with me. And then what can happen from all of that is if you start to look, this is what's so great about us human beings. It really is. We are amazing. Even when we're stuck on our habits, our practices, this is the way that it is. And we're willing to destroy someone else so that we can be right. Even that's amazing that we human beings can do that. And it's amazing that we have turned this earth, our life here. Without the earth, we have no life here, right? There are patterns here, ecological, environmental practices that the universe is. I think Kyla mentioned it in the beginning. Apple seed. In that apple seed, there's always already the pattern apple in all kinds of apples, golden, delicious, and this, and the pattern is there. And then once you put that apple seed in the ground, someone does, they nurture it, they cultivate it. All the seeds don't turn into trees, but there's a pretty good chance that some of them will. And then you have apples, right? The same patterns with wealth and abundance. If you're born into a conversation, and let's call them conversations, of you're not worthy, you're not abundant, you'll never have enough, there will never be enough, and you grew up in that conversation, your parents aren't bad for that. You're not bad. It's a conversation you grew up in. And now you're at a place where you can say, is there another pattern? And there has to be another pattern of wealth, right? Because they're wealthy people. And they somehow, maybe they were born into it. Many people were born into wealth. So that's very distinct from someone who was born into deep poverty. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean the person in deep poverty cannot become wealthy, but it will be a different journey.
Yeah.
Is this making sense?
Yeah, Betty, it is. And I want to bring in a point one of our guests made, Annie, talking about choice points, right? So yes, we're born into patterns, but we also have these choice points, and you might say every moment is a choice point, right? But it requires us being aware
Mhm.
um, that we're at choice, right? Because often we're blinded to even being at choice. Uh, but we're talking about, you're talking about abundance and it's a conversation that we're often born into or not. And it reminds me of what happened when my parents found out that I was going to be born. And my family, talking generationally, we're from Norway. We came over on a boat, talking about boats, um, several generations ago when, the Americas were just being founded to be what they are known as today. And they came over with just one crate, one small crate on this boat. We still have the crate. My uncle has it. and that was all their belongings. And they came and for generations they farmed, and they were in a conversation of they could eat, right? But for by anyone's standards, not
Hmm.
super abundant, right? And so my parents, were born into that pattern. And um, when my dad graduated high school, he was given a tent, and a sleeping bag. And
Hmm.
that's how he went off into the world, right? With his tent and his sleeping bag, and um, met my mom. And one day, my mom said, Kyla's coming into the world, me. And my dad was working for a carpenter at the time, an apprentice. And he did something that most people, I think, would call a little crazy. He quit. He quit his job when he found out my mom was pregnant. And he decided he was going to open his own carpentry shop. And the reason he did that is he told my mom he knew that he was always going to only make so much money if he stayed at his current job, right? He knew
Hmm.
he'd be an apprentice, he'd always have a boss, there'd be a ceiling. And he wanted to break that pattern. I don't think he used that language, but he wanted to break that pattern and create a new trajectory where he was uh, had more say so over the kind of life he could offer his family.
Yes. And this is so, as we navigate, as we move through the world, something, and this is what makes us human beings so amazing. We are fantastic. Even no matter how crazy we are, we're still fantastic. But something happens because these patterns, they're not floating around in the universe someplace, and maybe they are, but there's a way that where we start to watch other people, we start to, something within us gets triggered, like with your dad. It was, okay, I am, and it becomes like a declaration. This happens in language. Understanding language will give you so much peace and possibilities because language is the house of being. And it doesn't take much to command us, not demand, but to command us to move in a particular direction in a particular way. Like your dad, you were, it was like a command. My daughter will bam, 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 bam. She didn't know you were a girl, I don't think. But my child, and that brought with it, as everyone here on this call, I would say all of you at some moment have made new declarations of being. And once you take new actions, then new patterns start to emerge. And these patterns, and again, I've noticed this, I've worked with thousands of people worldwide, and I do mean thousands of people. And there's some people who show up like, yes, and they go for it. And then some people go, yeah, this is okay. And then some people, but all of that goes on. So then the question becomes for you, and what in my life, I started to ask, what and observe, what are the patterns for me in my life that will, so two things for me, not just one, provide me with what's needed and necessary, what's for my family, and then my family move to the broader world. How can I participate and engage with people so people awaken to their wholeness And as they awaken to their wholeness, they began to notice the practices that they are living from that's keeping them stuck, but not like a judgment. Is a, this is the thing, especially here in the United States. We've fallen into this thing that life thinking that life is supposed to be easy. It's not. It is not. Life is not supposed to be easy. This is me now speaking from my worldview. But life is here, and we have what's needed to shift our patterns. And it will take work. It will take, and not work like, I mean, but it will take you being awake, presence. All the great teachings, and I mean all the great teachings from Buddhism, Taoism, uh, Catholicism, Christianity, they all have a set of principles and practices through which you can live and shape your life. Kyla talked about, so the great thinkers, they were saying, these are some of the, this is some of what can assist you in living your life. As an example, right now, I'm in North Carolina, and there are these Buddhist monks walking from Texas to Washington, D.C. And they've said very clearly, but everyone's not hearing them. But what they're saying is, this is not a political walk. This is a peace walk. And peace, you walk in peace. And when you walk in peace, you begin to have a life that you generate peace. It's an interesting dynamic. It's something very interesting to see. And it's cold here. And they're walking. And they say, we walk for peace. And they bow. They should be here in Raleigh in a few days. And I'm going in the cold to see them. See what I said already? I got my patterns. I got to be warm. but but they draw forth. And so your life too, what are you drawing forth? What patterns do you draw forth in others? Uh, okay, I'm reading this. Yes, very good. So this is what it means to be an observer. It doesn't mean detached. It doesn't mean non-attached. But to observe is one of the highest consciousness places because you can observe and also observe the meaning that you give what you observe. See, reality, there is no reality minus you, the observer. And as you observe, you shape and you create realities, realities of separation, realities of abundance, realities of lack. That's you, that's me, that's us calling forth with these patterns that we then move through the world with. And what can the universe give us? It's a great question for you. What can the universe give you except what you pattern? Because it's the nature of the universe. It gives you what you pattern. And so becoming awake to, becoming aware of your patterns and patterning allows for, and I say it's going to be easy, but allows for you to begin, it allows you to begin to notice your patterns. But if you don't notice them, and this is the thing, I'm glad this came up, because these patterns, Kyla mentioned cognitively blind, these patterns get hidden and you don't even know that they're there until something can happen or not. Some people die living in a set of patterns. They didn't even know that they were living in patterns and that they had agency if they chose to shift some of those patterns. And many of you, as I see you on this call, you've shifted many patterns in your life already. So acknowledge yourself. There was something in, I don't know how you got here, but you looked up and you said, aha, there's something here. It was the patterning of your patterns that led you to this conversation. You are not your body and you have a body. So your body, all these patterns exist in our bodies, right? You're not your thoughts, and yet you have thoughts. You're not your emotions, and yet you have emotions. And when you can observe these patterns, like one pattern, for example, where do you feel uh where do you feel the pattern of separation in your own life right now? And you just notice and just look. So it is not, we're not here to get the answers. We're here to walk in a way, to live in a way that it becomes disclosive. Because that's what we're doing. We're disclosing the universe that we live in through the patterns that we are. And that's what I mean by observe. You start to observe. And you observe like these monks who are walking. You observe not to fix you. You don't need to be fixed, but you observe to notice your patterns. And then you start to ask the question. You don't have to ask the question. You will then begin to connect with people whose patterns match your patterns, and we call that love. Uh, until some patterns get broken, and then we say, I'm out of here. I can't take this anymore. Which is what, if you can listen this, I know what Maria had something in the chat. What was it, Kyla? Yeah.
Yeah, Maria was talking about, how can, let's take, my dad. My dad, born in poverty, his siblings born in poverty. My dad was able to break out of that, where some of his siblings weren't. What has one person be able to uh, create abundance out of scarcity?
This is a very good conversation because I'm going to do a 4-week course on this, on really what is abundance. You know, how you view your patterns around love, around money, around health. These patterns were there way before you were born. So what would have somebody in the family go? Like with my family, I was born in a poor community in Eastern North Carolina. Brothers, one sister, it was another sister, she died early. But what happened? What happened? Now, am I a wealthy woman in terms of money? No, I do okay. I'm not complaining. I live in a beautiful house. Got a great family. I ran Ideal Coaching for 30 some years, and now we're going in a different direction with it. Um, and to have me even say that took me looking at a pattern called, oh, you don't brag, you don't say this, you don't do that. And some of us are trapped in that. It's just being being quiet about who and what we are. It's a longer conversation. But if you're interested in a 4-week course in this conversation, send us an email and it will be well worth your time because we have practices, we have ways that you can observe. Observing is key. What kind of observer are you? Are you? Anybody in here study A Course in Miracles? Yeah. But the lesson today in Course in Miracles, the beginning of the year, and I've studied it now for maybe 20, 25 years, or even longer, sometime, but I'm into it now because it's telling you, it's telling me, but I'm listening, and I'm listening because you say, what you give meaning to everything that you observe. There is no inherent meaning in everyone. And so, how are you observing? And as you observe, you shape and you create. You're shapers. And through language, you've heard this before. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So, what does that mean? What's your speaking? You're speaking to yourself, especially. This is where we got to notice those patterns, your self-talk. And then, so I want us to have more questions than answers. Because
Hmm.
as soon as I get an answer, this is the way that it is, I'm going to shut everything else out. Can you hear me? And this is even as you leave here now, what recurring practices would make connection more valuable to you in your life? What is it as you get up in the mornings? What are your patterns, your thinking, and as you move and as you act? What is all that creating? What is it generating? What is it bringing forth? And I'll say this, not to sell you anything, because I know I'm here, but you cannot discover your patterns by yourself in a community, in a loving community, in a caring community, in a community that knows that who you are is whole, perfect, and complete. And you got some little wacky stuff going on. And so you begin to have humor with it. You begin to have lightness with it. And then, wow, you start to shape your patterns. Just what ontological coaches do. Can't speak for all coaches, but I speak for the coaches here. And it takes them, you might be surprised how long it takes them to get to the level that I'm speaking about here. It's a path for a lifetime. It's not about what you get, it's about who you become, who you're becoming, so that, and there's a so that you can shape this world that we live in. You see, the opposite of separation is not for forced utility, because if it's forced utility, it becomes domination. Some of the questions we're in right now. The opposite of separation is belonging with difference. We're not all the same. I don't want to be like you. You don't want to be like me. But can I participate? Can I engage in this environment and have us live together? And can you become the kind of person that can hold complexity without reaching for enemies? I noticed that in my own life, right in my house. I let my brother say something, and I go, meh, 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 meh. So we're going to start to wrap up here. But I want to say to you, I really appreciate you being here tonight. And being here, if you want you to be different, which is a possibility, you cannot only demand it. You're not that kind of being. When you demand something from yourself like other people demand it, there's a tendency to back up. We must practice and bring forth the practices to the world that we want until it becomes, and this is structurally real, our practices are structures. And we cannot live as human beings without structure. This is the way we designed the game so far. So with you, what is it that what can you take away from this? And what's the practice as you even think about it, as you even notice it? And we all got practices and they get hidden. This is the thing, when they're hidden, then how can you begin to observe and notice the pattern? And when you notice it, you can go, oh, there's a pattern.
Hmm.
You see, I have the capacity to shape patterns. And when I shape patterns, I shape my life and the lives of so many others. Not like I have to, but that's just the way that it is. We're interconnected, we're interbeings. And what you do and what I do has an impact on the whole that we all share. Another question, Kyla?
No, I think a saying came to mind, and that is you can have courage or you can have comfort, but you can't have both.
Hmm.
It feels really relevant right now. I mean, because I think it takes not just awareness, but also the courage to take action on that awareness to break from our patterns.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to assert that most of you have been pattern breakers in your life, or you wouldn't be here on this call. I can tell you that. But you've been about that. And so now it's remembering, maybe. So in your own life, think of one pattern right now. If you can even think of it. Like I have a pattern that I can tell you where I got it from. It's still a pattern, but because I teach and I direct and I coach. And so sometimes when I'm with my friends, I find myself, I'm in that mode. I'm teaching. Oh, I got this. I know this. And so it brings about disconnection. Uh, so what's a recurring pattern that you can look at right now? Not that it's shifted, but you can begin to observe. You can begin to notice. Uh, Someone say judging. Judging becomes a pattern. That doesn't mean that you don't have assessments. This is something else we learn. To assess is a powerful way to live in the world because if everything is the same and you can't tell this and you can't tell that, and that's what we're talking about assessments like that. But when you bring then, you have an assessment and then you bring all your judgments to it. That sets you up. Uh, yeah, it sets you up then to judging. What's that statement? Judge ye not, lest you be judged. It's very powerful teaching, but what does it really mean? It didn't say don't assess. It didn't say don't be prudent. There's something in that. So very good. And then the people that you are participating with, that you're living with, that are your friends, uh, yeah.
Hmm.
So we're gonna get ready to end, but I see Roberto here. Roberto says, I have a pattern of not being enough. It's a hard one. A lot of people have that one. It is a pattern. And you don't break that pattern of not enoughness by going to get a big old house, a big old car. But how do you live in a way? And when you get that you are enough, that you're whole, perfect, and complete, you give that to other people. Because as you encounter the world, you shape the world. It's 7:59.
Hmm.
I thank all of you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Couple announcements before you all leave. One is, as Betty mentioned, I'm having a baby probably next week. So we are going to continue the coaching shop. We'll be here February 3rd, and it'll just look a little different. I won't be here, but we'll have a different guest speaker. Betty will be here. We'll have a new topic, of course, as we always do. Same Zoom link, same time. All of that's gonna stay. Um, but I'll be somewhere in the world having a baby. Thank you, Arlie. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate all the good
Thank
wishes.
everyone and send us, let us know what works for you, how this worked for you. And if you're interested, where do they send it? You put it in the chat, Kyla.
Yeah, we don't have a place for you to sign up yet for Betty's course that she's gonna do. But hopefully we'll have one at the next coaching shop. But if you want to get in early on that offer, 4 weeks around abundance, you can write us at info@idealcoachingglobal.com.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear from you on what's happening for you in this coaching shop. So let me hear from you. Thank all of you. And may the blessings of God be upon you. May his peace abide within you. May her presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. May you walk in peace. May you walk in beauty. May you walk in joy. And may your hearts open to your full possibilities. Good night and thank you.
Good night, everyone.